Hey there, pirates! Welcome aboard the Anime No Mi channel. Katakuri humiliating Aokiji to save Pudding, captured by Teach? What if Big Mom's strongest sweet commander proved he's stronger than the former Ice Admiral? You're about to find out in one of the biggest battles in One Piece, because they're going to clash. Picture the scene. Pudding, the poor girl with the third eye that can read minds, is captured by Blackbeard in the chaos after Wano. Maybe in chapter 1160, or in some insane Elbaf flashback where Teach kidnaps her to decipher poneglyphs with her unique vision. Exactly the kind of underused power Oda loves to pull out. Like back in chapter 848, Blackbeard, the shadowy emperor with a bounty of 3.996 billion in chapter 1059, uses Pudding as bait to lure out the remaining Charlotte family. And who answers the call? Katakuri, the protective brother who tanked Luffy's gear forth in chapter 895 without even flinching, storming into Teach's territory with furious Mochi. But before he gets there, he collides with Aokiji Kuzan, the icy traitor who defected to the Blackbeard pirates in chapter 1081, with his Hige no Mi freezing entire seas like he did back in episode 227. Katakuri, with his trident and observation hockey that sees seconds into the future in chapter 886, doesn't just bypass Kuzan, he humiliates him, proving that a sweet commander at his peak can outdo a fallen admiral. Is Katakuri stronger than Aokiji? The answer is a loud yes in this theory, based on the scaling Oda's been building since Dressrosa. In chapter 895, Katakuri awakened his Mochi to create a mirror world, tanking Luffy's King Kong gun and pushing the captain all the way to Gear 5th in chapter 1044. A feat Kaido, the strongest creature, didn't even manage so early back in chapter 923. Aokiji, meanwhile, is a monster in his own right, freezing oceans in chapter 550 against Whitebeard. But his battle with Akainu in chapter 1081 lasted 10 days without a clear winner, showing that he's top tier, but not untouchable. Katakuri, with a bounty of 1.057 billion in chapter 879, has supreme haki that rivals Shanks in chapter 1054, and his advanced future sight gives him a massive edge over Aokiji's ice, which relies on area and temperature, but can't predict sticky Mochi reshaped in seconds. The story begins with Pudding's capture. Post-Wano, in chapter 1057, Big Mom retreats weakened and Teach hunting for fruits, since chapter 577 sees her third eye as a tool to read allies' minds, like Law or Kid, who carry Void Century secrets. Pudding, who already betrayed Big Mom for Luffy in chapter 858, becomes a valuable hostage, and Katakuri, the brother who protected Brule and the weaker siblings in chapter 882, won't let it slide. He sails off alone, leaving Wano's recovery behind, to rescue his little sister, arriving at Teach's ship where Aokiji guards the entrance like a frozen sentinel. Kuzan, with his icy leg from the duel with Akainu in chapter 1081, blocks Katakuri. Go home, Mochi man. Pudding stays with the boss. But Katakuri, eyes sharp beneath his mask, replies, "You froze seas, but you can't freeze blood ties. I'm getting through you." The battle erupts on a frozen sea. Aokiji unleashes Ice Age in true chapter 550 style, turning waves into statues. But Katakuri, with his future sight from chapter 886, sees it coming and molds Mochi into a barrier that absorbs the frost, just like he handled Luffy's overheat in chapter 894. He counters with a Mochi thrust, extending his trident in a strike that cracks Aokiji's ice, forcing the ex-admiral to shift into a hybrid form like he did in chapter 1081 against Garp. Katakuri doesn't stop. He uses advanced armament, coating Mochi in black hockey, burning like Zoro's in chapter 1036, breaking through Kuzan's ice defense. Shocked, Aokiji fires off Hado Kuzan, a freezing wave from chapter 550, but Katakuri predicts it with observation and dodges, countering with an awakened Mochi labyrinth that traps Aokiji, the same way he once trapped Luffy in chapter 895. The humiliation peaks at the climax. Aokiji, desperate, launches Pheasant Beak, the massive ice bird from chapter 550. But Katakuri, with supreme haki from chapter 895, unleashes a wave that shatters the bird and turns Kuzan's own ice against him, transforming the sea into a Mochi ice mirror reflecting the admiral's weakness. Katakuri, merciless, plants his foot on Aokiji's chest with his trident-piercing Kuzan's shoulder, declaring, "You froze justice, but you can't freeze family. Stay here in your own cold hell." He walks past, leaving Kuzan humiliated, bleeding on the ice, proving that a sweet commander at his peak surpasses a deserter admiral. By chapter 1081, Aokiji is strong, but weary from 10 straight days of battle. Katakuri, fresh out of Wano, uses speed and foresight to dominate. Inside Teach's ship, Katakuri bursts through, tanking Van Augur's shots in chapter 1106, and finds Pudding chained, crying for Luffy, is back in chapter 858. Teach laughs. Mochi Man came for his little sister. She reads minds perfect for my plans. But Katakuri, exploding with Mochi, frees Pudding and escapes, carrying her like he once carried Brûlée in chapter 882. The escape is chaos. Blackbeard unleashes Quake in chapter 577, splitting the ship. But Katakuri uses Supreme Haki to temporarily knock him back, shouting, "Touch my family again, and I'll turn you into dessert." They flee on a mochi boat, with Pudding whispering, "Thank you, brother." Luffy would be proud. Is Katakuri stronger than Aokiji? Yes, in this theory, by Oda's scaling. In chapter 895, Katakuri fought evenly with Pre-Gear 5 Luffy, who later beat Kaido in chapter 1049 Kaido, who tanked admirals like Fujitora in chapter 702. Aokiji is top tier, but his ice is slow against Future Sight Haki. Katakuri predicts encounters just like he did with Luffy. By chapter 1081, Aokiji loses to an old garp. Katakuri, young and at his peak, humiliates him with mochi that absorbs cold, turning the fight into a display of superiority. Pudding's capture adds drama. In chapter 848, she reads minds for Big Mom. Teach, hunting secrets since chapter 577, exploits her to decipher allies. Katakuri, the protector, rescues her just like he did with Big Mom's children in chapter 882, proving his family loyalty. Aokiji's humiliation would be iconic. Kuzan, the traitor in chapter 1081, frozen in mochi, muttering, "You are colder than me." Katakuri laughs, "Not cold loyal." This theory elevates Katakuri from villain to redeemed hero, saving Pudding and proving his strength against an admiral. The detailed clash. Aokiji begins with Ice Saber, his ice blades from chapter 550, but Katakuri foresees and blocks with mochi hardened by haki, like he did against Flampe in chapter 879. He counters with Trident Mochi, extending the weapon in a strike that cracks ice and wounds Kuzan's shoulder. Aokiji retreats, freezing the air into a blizzard, but Katakuri uses observation to navigate, shaping mochi into wings to fly overhead, then drives down a mochi thrust that pierces the defense. Humiliated, Aokiji tries Ice Time Capsule, the frozen dome from chapter 550, but Katakuri awakens mochi to infiltrate, creating tendrils that split it apart from inside, exposing Kuzan. The final blow. Katakuri uses Supreme Haki and a mochi punch that turns Kuzan's own ice against him, leaving him immobilized, whispering, "Tell Teach the Charlotte family never bows." Katakuri, with a bounty of 1.057 billion in chapter 879, scales above Aokiji through versatility. Mochi adapts to any environment, while ice is predictable against Future Sight Haki. In chapter 895, he tanks Luffy's Tankman Punch. Against Aokiji, he would tank the cold and counterattack. Pudding, once saved, reads Teach's mind during the escape, revealing his plans for the Void Century in chapter 967, giving the Straw Hats a major advantage. This theory makes Katakuri the hero who humiliates an admiral to save family, proving superior strength with haki and mochi. After the battle, Pudding hugs Katakuri. "You're the best, brother." He smiles under the mask. Family above all. Luffy, overhearing, would laugh, "Katakuri, you're badass. Let's team up against Teach." This saga elevates Katakuri from antagonist to ally, with Aokiji's humiliation as proof that sweet commanders at their peak can surpass fallen admirals. Katakuri's strength comes from relentless training. In chapter 882, he admits he's never lost. Against Aokiji, he uses that edge, predicting the ice and molding mochi into cold-resistant armor. Aokiji, wounded from his duel with Akainu in chapter 1081, is vulnerable. Katakuri exploits this, turning the fight into a frozen massacre. Pudding, now free, uses her ability to help, reading the minds of Teach's underlings. The theory closes with Katakuri allying with Luffy, honoring their fight in Whole Cake Island back in chapter 895, proving that true strength is loyalty. All of this not only raises Katakuri to a new tier of power, but also transforms his journey from antagonist to redeemed hero, showing that loyalty and family love can be just as powerful as any ability. The battle against Aokiji, detailed with precision, not only places Katakuri on a higher level, but also does justice axis to his character development throughout One Piece. With his ability to adapt Mochi to the environment and his futuristic hockey foresight, Katakuri proves to be an unstoppable force, capable of humiliating even a former Ice Admiral. By rescuing Pudding and defeating Aokiji, Katakuri not only saves his sister, but also sends a clear message that loyalty to family is stronger than any rivalry. Kuzan's humiliation is a landmark for the saga, showing that the power of a sweet commander at his peak can overcome even the might of fallen admirals. Katakuri's redemption, shifting from villain to ally, adds a new layer to the One Piece narrative, reinforcing the idea that true strength comes from dedication, from protecting those you love, and from growing beyond expectations. Thus, this epic battle is not just about power, but about the deeper values Oda has been building into the story all along. Katakuri, now more than ever, stands as a true hero, and his journey alongside Luffy is only just beginning. That was today's content. We hope you liked it and want to share your opinion on the subject. Don't forget to share the video, give it a thumbs up, and I'll see you in the next video. Take care and stay amazing.